Hey, what's up, ReFi Nation? I am very grateful to bring another episode this week around the renewable energy space. We have a conversation with William from Helios. They are building DeFi infrastructure to allow investors to support direct renewable energy projects on top of existing commercial and industrial businesses with cash flow and assets on their balance sheet. These are real world assets coming on chain with a stable yield and supporting electrification and decarbonization in the global south in particular. There are projects live in India, also the Middle East and South America. I'm really optimistic about this bear market providing a lens of focus to encourage capital to go towards the assets that actually have the most real world tangible value, and to use the power of Web3 to create transparency and increase integrity and improve investors' confidence about what assets they are buying. It's been a great conversation for me after having many months of hanging out with William in the founder circles and ReFi DAO, seeing somebody with a lot of experience building entrepreneurial ventures, turning his heart and mind towards climate and making a very targeted intervention at a specific piece of the puzzle that can make a big difference. So hopefully you enjoy this episode. They've got a launch coming up in the new year. I definitely recommend digging beneath the surface and looking at how each of us can deploy our capital and our talent to make the biggest difference in this time. Thanks for your attention. I hope you enjoyed the show, and let us know what you think. Hey, what's going on, William? Whereabouts are you calling in from, man? What are you up to? That looks like a cool place behind you.
Yeah, so I'm calling in from Hayama in Japan. It's sort of a surf town just south of Tokyo. Staying in a 100-some-year-old Kominka house. And yeah, really excited to be in the area. I've been on the road for like 10 months, so almost
really?
11 months now, I think. Yeah, started in Portugal, so eager to go back.
Nice.
But yeah, I've been on the road. Thankfully, Japan is my very last stop. Here with the folks from Akiya DAO, who are to touch on that real quick before we dig into all things Helios and etc. Let me see, Akiya DAO. So we are purchasing and renovating a Akiya, which is an empty home located in rural Japan. Essentially, there's a huge housing crisis in Japan. By 2030, 1/3 of all homes will be vacant. At the same time, we feel there's a lot of positive generative energy in Web3 that is kind of looking for a home outside of Twitter Spaces, kind of that level of engagement. I think that a lot of people crave an in-person experience. That's something I actually facilitated a few hacker houses across Europe a few months back, and just loved the experience, had such an awesome time there, and kind of wanted to continue that in a more permanent sense. Sort of a convergence of forces, but the long story short is that we're here to purchase and renovate a house, and we want to kind of create a space for artists, builders, creatives, really just awesome people looking to create cool stuff from all around the world to come together in this, ancient and culturally significant home in Japan to renovate it and kind of create a container for human flourishing is a phrase we like to use. And I really like that one. Just a place for awesome people to be doing awesome stuff. So,
dude, that's such a nice lens. I very much feel drawn towards those bases of in-person connection. There's a big reason why I moved to Portugal, was just to be near other people physically. I think, I'd been working remote for a few years before the pandemic, and then the pandemic hit, and then I don't know, there just is something that you can't really beat of being with people who see a world in a similar way, are building towards a better future and enjoying food and drinks together and really cherishing those moments. So I'm excited to see what y'all create. And I think it's important to have those strong bases from which to build big, audacious, organizations that are trying to change the world. So good on you, man, for putting yourself in a place that really fits your entrepreneurial energy and vibe.
Thanks, man.
And yeah, I know this, you've had a long founder journey. You've had other experiences in the past. And so I'm just curious to understand, Yeah, Akiya DAO, Helios, like how's this all fitting into your own journey of being a founder, and like what are you really trying to achieve through this work that you're doing? So maybe we touch on that a little bit before we dive into like the depths of Helios and what you guys are up to.
Yeah, for sure. Been a founder for about 9 years. And yeah, we're coming up on 2023. So I've been in crypto for almost 9 years as well. Originally, I was just sort of doing crypto stuff and also founding stuff. They never really united until that came much later. There's sort of side projects on side projects. But yeah, I've done all sorts of entrepreneurial realms. I've done, real estate, food, liquor. I did African American hair care, which was such a wild journey. We won a Genius grant for it. Things got way out of control. But that was super fun. Done property management. I've done like online, like web applications, two-sided marketplaces, tattoos, all sorts of stuff. Anyway, eventually I found myself at building out a car audio component manufacturing company, which was a super niche, but super profitable experiment. We were designing and manufacturing small components that people would use in very large audio systems.
Okay.
Worked on that for about 3.5 years and then sold that in February of 2019. Yeah. And that was definitely like a formative experience in my life because it was sort of, I've been like hustling these side projects for years and years and years. And it's always like, man, if I could just like build a proper company and like, go through that, like I did the first step like 1,000 times and it was fun, like getting to the later steps and like got to the point of like exiting. And I was like, this is like, my life is complete. Like, this is going to be the best thing ever. And, it was super sick for like a week. And I was just like walking around, like, I'm the king, and then I was like, wait a minute, like, what do I do now? What was the point of all of this? Like, I spent years, and I mean, like, I was grinding. Like, I'd get up at 4 a.m. because I was doing university at the same time. So I'd get up at 4 a.m. and start my entrepreneurial work. The only, like, I have such a distracted nonsense brain that like if anyone else is awake or anything is going on, I can't get anything done. So I'd like wake up early in the morning, do all of my work, and then like go to classes and go through all those phases and then go out. And I was just like, I stayed up for 3 days in a row one time. I had it was chaotic. I was like totally toasted. And it just felt like it was like, what was the point of this? So a long journey after that. Did a lot of traveling. Actually, fun fact, the first thing I did after I sold my company, I Googled like, what do you do? Like, what do you do when you like have an exit? And it was just like, the first thing was travel. So I just booked a one-way ticket to Tokyo, leaving like 3 days later and just like flew to Japan. I'm like, I've never been to Asia. Like, here we go.
That's awesome.
So it's definitely a unique experience. Like coming back to Tokyo, coming back to Japan after all this time. Super glad to be back. But I think really the big takeaway there, I spent, a long time thinking on this, a lot of time meditating and contemplating and just like being kind of depressed for a long time. But I decided that, an entrepreneur is like who I am. Like I want to build things. I need to build things. And like for me, there's like really no other option that would like satisfy my physical, mental, emotional, physiological needs. But if I go through this trying experience of being a founder again, like it needs to be impactful. Like it needs to have like a much deeper purpose. And for me, that was very much environment. I grew up in a small town in rural Wisconsin, right? There's like 8,000 people there. It's called Holton, Wisconsin. If anyone's from there, hello. We probably already know each other. There's nobody else
All
there.
those listeners in Holton.
Yeah. My Holton, Wisconsin demographic, shout out. No, so I grew up like in nature, I didn't have neighbors. It's just like trees and farms, basically. So I've definitely have had this strong connection to nature since I was a kid. And actually it was actually going back home and spending time in nature that I realized like, this is what really appeals to me. This is what matters. And from there it was I have this skill set. I have these connections, this capital, like all of my resources behind me. Like what can I do personally to make a difference, right? Like what's the most effective thing that I can do to fight climate change, to advance natural causes, to make a meaningful impact in the climate space, I guess. I don't know. A bunch of ways of phrasing the same thing.
Yeah. Yeah, it's super interesting. It reminds me very much of a conversation we had with David Rodriguez from Draft Ventures. Yeah, he's an experienced founder and
super cool dude.
Went through a similar period of introspection and came to that point of realization that all that he had and all that he had been given was best applied towards climate. And it's quite a powerful shift and realization to harness all of that potential energy and direct it at something greater than ourselves. And I really enjoy the metaphor that I was given at Terra.do when I was doing the climate change learning for action bootcamp, where they basically say, hey, climate is, a symphony. There's so many different moving parts, and it can be overwhelming as you come into the space to trying to figure out, what instrument do you play? Where do you fit in? You can't play all of them. So your job is to just find your instrument and stay in time. And
I like that
there's
a lot.
this beautiful harmony that comes into place when you accept that, I don't have to do everything. I can have a really directed contribution towards this massive coordination game and make a really big difference if I do my part right. And I think there's a beauty in Web3 around the open source composability, money Legos interacting with other systems and creating network effects that other people can build upon to say, I want to take what so-and-so's done and extend it or, fork it, modify it, et cetera. So why don't we dive into the problem you guys are trying to solve at Helios, your understanding of it, how you came to see this as a problem. And maybe we start there and we can unpack some of the other edges a little bit as we go.
Yeah. So Helios in a nutshell. Helios is a DeFi protocol that enables anyone anywhere to directly fund high impact solar installations all around the world. So basically accelerating the clean energy transition in places like India, Africa, and South America. One of the big problems I saw, or really the initial thing, my first thought of okay, well, how do I do the most good? It's I can just invest in climate stuff. How hard can that be, right? We'll start there and we'll build from there. So I started there and got completely stuck there. I was wait a minute, why can't I invest in green assets? I can't. Other people must want to do this. This isn't I'm not doing something. I've done some crazy stuff. This is not one of those crazy things. This is something super simple. I want to put my money toward good things for the environment. And they're just buy an ESG ETF. And it's I've worked at a
what
private
assets
equity
are
firm.
Actually in that thing? Yeah. What am I actually getting exposure to? Yeah.
I'm I've worked at a fund. I'm going to do some homework. I'm just going to here's my money. I trust financial advisors. I'm not that crazy. And I took a look at what goes into ESG ETFs, and it's holy shit, man. If you're investing in them, please take a look at what you're investing in. If there's oil companies in there, yes, really. It's 70% tech stocks, 9% is faith-based investments, which I can't even praying for change. I don't even know where to begin for that. What is a faith-based investment? What do you mean? So, basically all this is to say there's an insane amount of greenwashing going on, and it's really difficult to really invest in high impact direct solutions. For me, I'm very a very pragmatic person. Stories don't hit me in the heart the way they seem to hit other people in the heart. I'm very a data driven person. So I'm just let's look at the data. What are the most effective ways to fight climate change? And renewable energy, it's solar power, wind power, and all this other stuff. The nuclear is down here. I just think that's I think nuclear is the way to go. To be full disclosure, nuclear is the way to go. It's just not there yet, and it's not really investable. Anyway, getting off course.
You mean fusion?
Yes, fusion, not fission.
Yeah.
Definitely. Definitely team fusion. But in the 10-year time frame, it's solar is the best way to invest in climate. So I'm all right, let me invest in solar. No problem, and no, it's a huge problem. It's really, really difficult. I can buy stock in a solar company, but that's not funding solar. That's investing in a company, and that return profile is based on solar. You it could be said it's a derivative. Anyway, Helios lets you directly invest in solar energy. You can use your capital to fund the purchase, installation, and operation of solar panels. You're directly generating clean energy. That energy is sold. It's profitable, and that yield, it forms 100% of the yield in the protocol. So there's no crazy token shooting back and forth. There's no like, we promise this will work, just invite 4 of your friends. It's just like a tried and true business model. I think the crypto side of this is that crypto has a pretty major diversification problem. I think as we've seen in recent times.
Asset diversification.
Yes. Yeah.
And also human diversification, but yeah.
Oh, yeah. That is, we can get into that too.
Two white guys on a podcast.
Yes.
Two white Americans on a podcast. Anyway, keep rolling.
Too many Americans, man. Always.
So yeah, major diversification.
Yeah. Essentially, like, I mean, you see with 3AC, you see with Lunatera, you see with FTX, like, diversification of your portfolio is really, really important. Proper management and transparency into the business practices of what you're investing in are super important. There are treasuries with $200, $300 million of assets that are all in ETH. Like, in the Web 2 world, they would call you completely insane. Like, you would, you'd be disbarred or whatever the disbarred version is in finance. Like, it's crazy, So we're offering strong diversification opportunities into real world assets. So even if, God forbid, like, you didn't care about the environment at all, you're just like a pure capitalist, like, I still think Helios is a strong investment opportunity because we're locking in 8 to 12% yields with 20-year contracts in the real world, backed by real world energy infrastructure. These are fully collateralized asset-backed tokens. Of course, they're also totally kick environmental ass. Like, there's, we're generating clean energy.
Environmental ass, I love it. Okay, so let's unpack that a little bit. So I think there's some people who are more familiar with renewable stuff. We did obviously an episode with Renewables, and Brianna gave a pretty good historical background on environmental commodities. Let's talk about kind of how this works today and what role you guys are playing in particular, because I understand a few pieces of the puzzle, but maybe you can kind of fill in my gaps. So you have landowners, right? And some of these pieces of land could be used for a variety of purposes, right? Farming or whatever. And there's a number of people looking at just saying, hey, I just want to build like a massive solar farm and put a bunch of photovoltaics onto this plot of land. And I need a bunch of capital to do that. And I need to basically, create a business model that says, here's the capital I need. It'll take me this long to get this stuff set up and running. Then I'll be generating power, this much power by this time frame of which I can, pay back whoever my investors or my, the people that loaned me that money to be able to pay for the solar. And, in many parts of the world, renewable energy is sort of, obviously more profitable than the fossil-based counterpart. But in certain parts of the world, the cost of capital is so high that it makes that prohibitive, right? So can you unpack a little bit in terms of the connection between landowners, project developers, and the kind of financing instrument and what role Helios plays in this, and, highlight any misunderstandings I may have had when I described?
Yeah, absolutely. Where to begin? I think first, solar is a very broad space, right? There's obviously the geographical component of, are you building solar in the US? Are you building solar in Europe? Are you building solar in Africa, Southeast Asia, India, South America, et cetera, right? You can build it all over the world. Each one has its own kind of subtleties and quirks. On the other side of it, there's a scale of the size of solar that you're building. So you can build like residential solar, you can build like commercial and industrial solar, or you can build utility scale, which is like a plot, massive plot of land, just like a sea of solar, mostly like ground mounted, right? So the solar that you described is generally closer to utility scale, which is here's a plot of land. I want to put a ton of solar on it and I want to sell that to the grid. I think overall that seems to be the most profitable area of solar, which is why it's also like the most adequately funded area of solar. That said, it is fairly risky in that you are counting on the grid to buy that energy. You're counting on the site to be what you expected, and you're going to have the longest lag time between when you purchase those assets and when they start generating capital. So we operate primarily in the commercial and industrial sector. So that is working with existing businesses, say like a university, a hospital, a textiles factory, like any small to medium enterprise, right? That's like random businesses. Let me see. Some of the benefits of working with them is they are a operating business with real cash flow. So we know that as a counterparty, they're good. Yeah, they're good for the loan, right? And they're, generating income. They have financial history. It's just the due diligence process is a lot simpler. Mm-hmm. So we've gone commercial and industrial. On the US versus the rest of the kind of emerging markets versus developed markets, mm-hmm. in developed markets, there is tons of capital, like people really, really want to invest in this. There's just not enough projects to actually invest in. And all of the big ones just get immediately swooped up by like banks with infinite money. All right. So you actually have too much money and you have not enough projects. On the other hand, in emerging markets, it's precisely the opposite problem, right? You go to the south of India and you'll immediately realize like, this is a great place to build solar. There's no adverse weather conditions and it's just insanely sunny all the time. It's like hot and sunny. Like, why is there no solar here? It's like, because it's really hard to finance it. Like there's not enough money from that economy flow from kind of like that, their financial infrastructure is not in place to as effectively loan money and finance that solar. So you have too many projects and not enough capital. Well, we're like, why don't you just connect the capital over here to the projects over here? It exists. Right now, it's mostly large projects. So in the utility scale solar, right, really big solar installations, like that's not a problem. BlackStone has solar installations all over the world that they can fund. The trouble is when you're working with these big banks, you're looking at a $5 to $10 million minimum. Like the smallest amount they're willing to invest is enormous. And that scales up to like $100-200 million, like very, very quickly. Whereas most of these commercial and industrial solar installations are 100 to 500K in size or smaller.
Okay.
So
interesting. Right. I didn't realize. Yeah.
Basically, essentially there are thousands of these projects that are too small to get the big money, but like can't quite get the local money because the infrastructure there is lacking. So we're like, well, crypto people want to invest in solar. Crypto people want asset diversification. Crypto people want real world assets. Why don't we build infrastructure that connects this, trillions in crypto capital to all of these underfunded solar projects so that we can do good and make money for everyone involved? The only thing that's unclear to me is like why more people, I guess I'd say like, why aren't more people doing this? But then like in my day to day, I'm like, man, this is really hard to do. Like there's so much complexity from, and just like the requirement of understanding of like legal, regulatory, like not only finance, but like international finance, understanding crypto. Like it's just like a lot of complexity, quite difficult. But if you can pull it off, we can.
So maybe let's walk it through it from like a perspective of a business in South India, like you described, saying, hey, we've got this existing plant, we produce product X, and we use a bunch of energy, and like if we could invest in a 500K solar array on the top of our plant, like this would be really helpful for us on a variety of measures. Where do you guys fit in, and what's the process of them? Because essentially they're, applying for effectively a loan from Helios. Is that right? To finance the installation. And then how do they end up paying it back? And how do you like manage the collateral? What is given as collateral? How do you manage the risk? Like just maybe unpack it from the perspective of that particular user point, if that's all right.
Yeah. That's a perfect question. I think like when you give me like, how is solar? It's just like, there's so much to do. I think if just like walking through a user flow gives people a really clear idea of like, here's what's actually happening. So to begin, a solar development firm, which is a team of solar construction and financing experts, they will go to different small businesses and say, hey, you have a great rooftop to build solar on, but you don't have any solar there. Why is that? The business will say, well, we don't have the capital to spend on solar, right? We have to spend a bunch of money up front, but then our return trickles in over a few years. So the solar development firm goes, well, we'll pay for all of that solar. You don't have to make it no investment at all from you. All the business has to do is sign a contract that says, I will purchase energy from you for 5 years, 7 years, 15 years, 20 years, whatever the length of the contract.
Interesting.
So sort of a win-win for them. They get solar at a cheaper rate than they get energy at a cheaper rate that they're paying, and it's green energy. So solar energy, as opposed to, I mean, most of these grids that we're working with in India are burning coal. So they're burning
coal, the dirtiest energy.
Yes, the dirtiest energy. So they're going from the dirtiest energy to perfectly clean energy at no cost. For them, perfect. That's why there's so many projects in this region. They're like, that's amazing. Why would we not do that? So the solar development firm takes that contract and brings it to Helios, a capital provider, and says, hey, we have this contract for this solar installation. Here's all of the, financial documents on the business. Here's kind of like all the necessary docs you need to do due diligence. What do you think of this deal? And we'll review some. Obviously, some deals are like not so great. Some are amazing. I think it's really comes down to the strength of your relationships with the solar developer. You need to be working with the right people that you can trust. For Helios, we only work with businesses that have a longer than 10-year operating history in India. And in South America, we're actually working with mostly like large multinational companies like Nestle, Goodyear, Teva Pharmaceuticals, really big companies that the reputational risk of not paying us back is greater than any gain that they could make, right? You don't want to be in the news for screwing your green energy provider. Like that's a really bad look. So they bring us the contract saying, would you like to fund this renewable energy installation? We say, absolutely. That's what we do. We do our due diligence and we basically enter into a business agreement with the solar developers. So we will maintain ownership of we'll give them the money as a loan, and we maintain to purchase solar assets. We maintain full ownership over those solar assets. And as those generate energy, we sell that energy to our commercial customers. They're generally saving 40 to 60% on their energy bill. So they're getting green energy and massive savings. And we're still making generally 8 to 12% over the period of the loan. All of that money flows directly back to our crypto users, who are essentially our investors in these solar projects. And soup to nuts, that's about it. So from the user side, they're depositing capital, which would be USDC or USC or USN.
Side, kind of.
From the investor side, which is crypto users. Depositing stable coins into the protocol. They can choose which bucket of solar installations they want to invest in, say, Northern India, Southern India, North Africa, East Africa, South America, different geographical buckets. They can invest in those specific solar installations. And that's pretty much all they need to do on their end. And then they earn yield over time. 8 to 12% per year. I've said that enough now. That's pretty much it. Pretty simple, nothing crazy. Like essentially we wanted to make the protocol as simple as possible. I think there's a lot of very complex DeFi protocols that I've sort of consistently failed to understand. And then when those super complex money-making machines suddenly steal all your money, everyone's really surprised. Like, what? Like, I can't believe they've done this. It's like, well, just invest in things that you can understand. Like, if you can't understand where the money is coming from, like, it's probably something wrong. Fund energy, sell energy, earn money back. Like.
Yeah, totally.
Simple.
I think it's a really nice targeted intervention that you guys have made, focusing on the industrial and commercial, focusing on, the emerging markets, focusing on projects that banks would otherwise struggle to finance, and businesses which, have a clear operating history and, have assets and have cash flow. It's a really clear targeted play. And it makes me think like, there's a big opportunity here. So I'm curious to hear you understand like what is the size of that slice of the market, and how are you guys going about capturing it?
Yes, absolutely. One of the things that we do struggle with quite a bit is getting consistent market data on emerging markets. Like I actually know, like I have a much more like clearer data set on like US solar markets, which we don't even operate in, just because like that information is so readily available. But when you look at the size of the solar market in India or Africa or Chile, like it's surprisingly difficult to get that data, especially when you want to drill into that commercial and industrial slice of it. I think the trickiest part there is like there's so much to solar that it's like how big is any given slice. I know that global solar is currently something like 200 billion. Solar is growing really quickly. Basically the interest in green investments is also growing super rapidly. I want to say it's at something like 400, like BlackStone alone is $400 billion this year. It's doubling every year. It's like 100% year over year growth. And that's like at cent $1 billion scale. Like you're just looking at a chart that just goes straight up. And I think that really reflects the like sentiment of modern times of like, 20 years ago, it's just like Al Gore shouting at a wall, like, hey, global warming. Like nobody really listened. It's just like, oh, he's a hippie, whatever. And now it's like, you see coast flooding, you see forest fires, you see like very imminent signs of climate change. And it's like, oh, we need to do something. It's like, well, yeah, like we've needed to do something for a very long time. I wish more would have been done previously, but like here we are now. We can only can only move forward. We can only do the best with what we've been given. So I think the consumer sentiment, like I really want to invest in climate change, is like really, really growing. So when I look at the total addressable market, I ask myself like, well, is this just emerging markets? Is this just commercial and industrial? Or do we have the opportunity to build something that can capture a very broad swath of desire to invest in impact? When I look at current impact investing solutions, like even like outside of Web3, like I think Web3 solutions are actually the best solutions. Like when I look at Web2 solutions, I'm like, this is ridiculous. Like this is so horribly bad. Not to like point it, like I'll just point out like BlackStone ESG in particular. Like come on, like the head of ESG at BlackStone quit because he was like, this is criminal greenwashing. Like imagine the CEO of your company just being like, hey, this is all bullshit. Like nobody's gonna say it. Like it's like, come on, it's the guy running the division. Like Google this, like Tariq Fancy, like Tariq Fancy, left Blackstone and like wrote a 40-page expose calling it like greenwashing nonsense. Wow. And this is like the leader in like ESG investing. So when I look at Helios, I don't see it as a way to fund solar and emerging markets. I see it as, on a 10, 15, 20 year time scale, which is the time scale we operate. Like we have 20-year contracts.
Yeah, we have to.
Yeah, we'll be here. I think of it as a way to change all of impact investing, because when I look at impact investing, I see a horribly broken system. It's not as if we're alone fixing this. And I really welcome anyone who is interested in working on this problem to, join Helios or found a competitor. Like people ask me, like, are you worried? Yeah. Like if you prove this works, like what, like won't a bunch of people come and just like do it as well? I'm like, yeah, but if that doesn't happen, we all die. Like that's the best thing that can happen. I don't even understand the question. Like you're looking at a way to make like 3x returns. I'm looking at a way that like we all come together and save the human race. And like, I'm not doing that alone. Like that's way too hard. Like someone smarter than me. Yeah, the homies need to come and help us out with this. Because like there's billions of dollars of solar installations that are going unfunded. Like this is free money, you guys. Come take it. Invest
and emissions are still rising. Temperatures are still rising.
Yeah,
totally. Yeah. So where are you guys at in terms of your roadmap? So I know you did really well in one of the Gitcoin rounds. I think you raised like 90K or something. How have you been invested to date? What pilots have you run? How much capital have you deployed? And like what's coming next? Yeah.
So we killed in GR13. Shout out to everyone who helped us. We had over 500 unique contributors. We placed
Bitcoin love.
I think number 5 overall, raised like almost $80,000. So we've used that to fund solar installations in India. We have 4 solar installations online right now in Pune and Kerala. We are looking at funding a hospital solar installation in Guatemala. We're also, cool. I will say, I've been talking about this for a while. It's moving very slowly, and I'm truly sad about it because I think it's such an awesome opportunity to do both social good and environmental good. This is a project that like I'm obsessed with. It's definitely a lot more difficult to fund than most projects because it is less profitable and it is sort of like in like a very, very developing country rather than like a medium developing country. So That's Guatemala. Yeah. We're still on it. Trust me. I'm getting this deal done if it kills me. I think it might kill me. No. In a more actionable sense, we're working on funding a project in UAE, United Arab Emirates.
Okay.
Let me see. We've got a university in India that we're working on funding as well. So that's the gist of that.
Amazing.
We're closing on some
operational.
Yeah. So we're out here. We exist. I think the biggest thing for us was like, well, do we really know how to fund solar on the other side of the world? So rather than starting with a bunch of marketing hype saying like, we're going to do this, it's going to be crazy. We just went and did it to prove that we could do it. So I very much believe in like a pragmatic approach to things. I think there's personally, I think there's like way too much marketing, and I don't want to say way too much storytelling, but like sometimes a little bit too much storytelling. Like people tell a story that doesn't exist as if it exists.
And not enough impact. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, like do the work.
I had a reader in the ReFi Roundup respond to a feedback request. They were just like, more impact, less hype. And I was like, yes, thank you. Totally. So you guys are making that impact. You guys are actually financing projects. And then what's the path from here? Like, are you going to raise money to really take these proof of concept projects and scale it out? Or like what's happening next?
Yeah. So immediate next steps. I think the biggest thing upcoming is our public launch. So we have been working on building out this protocol for what feels like a lifetime now. I think we're actually coming up on a year. I think we should host like a Helios birthday party. If anyone's in Tokyo, join me for Helios birthday party. So we're launching soon. I think we're actually like very nearly ready to launch. I will say the only thing holding us back right now is like market conditions. It feels like the excuse for just like everything is just like, oh, market conditions. But I look out the window and like the whole world's on fire and I'm like, maybe we should wait until the things have calmed down a little bit, right? FTX is still spicy and et cetera, et cetera. So I think if I had to guess, I would say like mid to late January is when we're looking at launching. Really the big thing with launch is we'll finally be able to accept capital from all over the world to begin funding solar installations. So we I'm personally like crazy excited. We've lined up like a few $1 million worth of solar installations that we can invest in. So in terms of the
amazing
two-sided marketplace, right? We've spent the last year, we've built solar installations. We've proved we can do it. We began to, build all these relationships. We're coming up on like year-long relationships with these solar developers all around the world. They're like, all right, we're ready. Like we've got solar installations for you to build. Bring us the capital. Yep. And it's always been like, we're working on the tech. We're working on the tech. We're working on the tech. Tech is finally done. So we are looking to bring our solution to the world and begin funding more and more solar. I would, if it's a huge launch, that'll be awesome. If it's a quiet launch, like as long as we're funding solar, as long as we're moving. Yeah, I mean, it's as simple as that. Like, as long as we are funding more solar, as long as there is more solar in the world than when we began, I will be happy with that. Like, whether this goes viral or we raise like $20,000, like, we'll fund more solar.
Incremental.
Yeah.
Exactly. Eye in the prize. Totally.
Yeah. It's a long-term game.
Incremental improvement process. Definitely. And who else is working on this with you? Like I remember walking through your deck a while ago and seeing some pretty sweet people coming alongside. Obviously you've got, a broad entrepreneurial background, but who else is leading the charge behind the scenes and making this come to life?
Yeah, absolutely. So we've been working with John from Spark Eco. We've also been working with Colleen at Gitcoin. So we were looking at funding a lot more like social good, flavored projects. So along with Spark Eco, we spun up the Solar Foundation and actually had a small Gitcoin round, in the most recent round that we were able to raise a good amount of money to support the Ioeka project and
Casa Jonathan.
Yeah. And Casa Pueblo in Puerto Rico. I always mix up
Uganda and Casa Pueblo, Puerto Rico. Okay.
Yes. Cool. Yeah. I hope it's not Costa Rica. I always mix up Puerto Rico and Costa Rica. I need to go to one of them, so I have like a strong sense of which one is which. Sorry if I messed that up. I'm doing my best. So we were able to raise some capital and really like start a more socially focused, social over profits endeavor. So they're primarily working on that with that. I've got our head of ops is James. So he's doing all sorts of cool stuff. A lot of like behind the scenes work, a lot of community work. We've got some meme folks, and we're looking at bringing on a head of sales right now. I think, cool. Sales is something that we've always kind of struggled with, in that we're very much builders, but we're not big, like talking with other people, or like, I'm just like horrible at hype. Like I'm literally so bad. So we're like hiring, a hype man to, get our launch out the door. I just want to make sure I'm not forgetting anyone. I mean, we just worked with so many fantastic individuals over the last year that like, I would love to just give a shout out to everyone who has contributed to Helios, whether it be big or small. We've had, so many people arrive through the Discord. I've met so many awesome people at conferences, in, ETH Barcelona, Block Split, ETH Denver. I've just met crypto. I was staying at a hostel in North Macedonia, and the other guy in my hostel room, there were 4 of us, and it was 2 software developers working on climate tech in Web3. I'm like, no way. Like, no way. I love it. So just
the tides are changing, man.
Yeah. I was like,
there's becoming a movement.
What? Like, how are you in North? Cool. I didn't even know North Macedonia was a country. Like, how are we both here? So I just want to
this is where the ReFi devs hang out.
Yeah, apparently, yeah. That's. I mean, shout out the Balkans. Like, what a fantastic region. Eastern Europe is super cool. Anyway, nice. I just want to like send a lot of love to everyone who's been part of the Helios journey. It's certainly been a rocky ride. I've learned so much as a human, as a leader, as just like a being who exists. And it's been such a pleasure to like work with everyone who's contributed. Again, like whether big or small, like it all counts. It all moves us forward and pushes us toward the ultimate goal, which is just funding more solar, doing our part in the fight against climate change.
Well, dude, that's super cool.
Tons of love.
Kudos to you guys for putting your heads down, building through the bear, keeping focused on the prize of financing renewables. I think I love the pragmatic approach. I love the impact first, and you can hype up later once you've, financed the projects and proven it to the world. I'm really excited to hear the tech is ready and launch is around the corner. And maybe just quickly before we close out here, I know we've got a few minutes left. Just help me understand like the legal structures and how it works. Like, is Helios a company? Where is it incorporated? How do you deal with all of the different, projects in different countries? How do you deal with, the management of risk? And, what does that web of considerations look like?
Yes. Now I'm immediately remembering the person I forgot to shout out was our lawyer, Nick. Infinite love. Like, I think one of the biggest competitive advantages of Helios is actually that like we don't come from like an immediately solar background or like solar or climate background. Our biggest areas of expertise, I would say, are finance, regulatory, and tech. So essentially whereas a lot of people come from like, I want to do good for the world. Like, I've planted a lot of trees. Like, how can I do this? We're like, we've moved money all over the world in a regulatory compliant manner. How can we stop moving that money from hedge funds' pockets to like actual stuff that deserves money? We've kind of began with the regulatory piece and built backwards. I think if you want to build a project, I see Helios as a 20, 30, 40-year project because that's how long we're locked in for it. I hope you'll be with us for the journey. We wanted to start from a place of regulatory compliance and then build a fantastic user experience backwards. Cool. Getting into Helios, I'll say one, not financial advice, not a lawyer, hire a lawyer. They're super helpful. And I think our solution is fairly specific to what we do, but Helios is actually like 6 or 7 different companies, I want to say. So we have a Delaware C Corp, we have a Delaware LLC, we are spinning up an offshore foundation, we have a special SPV, we have an LLP. So what's a more helpful way to phrase this? Our operations are headquartered in the US. For each country that we need to we operate in like a solar sense, we have to have an SPV and so a special purpose vehicle to finance and own these solar assets, and we need an LLP, which is a limited liability partnership with our solar developers.
Right.
So for every country that we're in, we have one of those. So we have one of those in India.
Cool.
We have one of those in UAE. We're finalizing, I believe. We're in the process of finalizing our structure in Chile. I hope we don't have to redo it for Mexico. I'll have to check on that one.
Yeah, that's kind of like the blueprint. That's cool that you have that structure set up and you've done it from a regulatory compliant way first, as opposed to the like we'll just make stuff happen and then figure it out later. I think that's totally the right play. And yeah, man, for people who are listening or resonant with the approach you guys have taken, the opportunity, like, how can they get involved? How can they support what you're doing? Who do you need? You know, what's going to take you guys to the next level?
Yeah, absolutely. So right now, the best way to get involved would probably be to follow us on Twitter. We are at Helios ReFi. From the Twitter, you can find our Discord link to join the community and get involved. We also have a website, www.helios.eco. It's super cool. If you saw our website a long time ago, please check out our new website. It looks a lot better. Our development team has been hard at work building out fantastic stuff. And then, really the biggest thing is supporting our launch. So coming in January, we'll be having a public launch of our protocol. Super, super excited for that. And at that point, you can, just be there for it. Tell a friend, invest capital if you want to, fund some solar. Really, like, any help is helpful. So just participating in a launch in whatever way you feel is reasonable for you. And in terms of joining our team, we are definitely looking for marketing and sales people, community people, really people that want to engage with the ReFi community as a member of the Helios delegation, I suppose. But yeah, I think that's the biggest thing. It's just we're finally bringing what we've been building for all this time to the people. I'd love for you to check it out.
Well, dude, it's been an honor having you in Founder Circles. I so appreciate, the wealth of experience that you've had and the focus on building and making an impact and, seeing the challenges that we have and dedicating yourself to it. It's a real gift, man. And I'm excited to see where you guys end up in a few months and even a year from now. I think these kind of targeted interventions have huge potential for leverage and impact. So thanks, man, for coming on the pod, and look forward to seeing what you guys come up with in the new year and participating in the launch myself. I'm really looking forward to it.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you for spearheading the ReFi movement. Like, it's so great to have like a representative that I know is fighting for me. I think of you as like, I don't know if this is a congressman for ReFi or something. Like my voice at the global stage. Like someone's out here rallying the troops, getting all the people involved. I know it's not me. I'm here to build stuff. I wish I was better at talking with people and promoting things and like, telling a story and sending a message. But I'm so glad that you were the one who's doing it. Thank you so much for having me on the podcast. It's really been a pleasure. And yeah, I'll see you around the Founder Circles. Good stuff.
Totally. Awesome, man. And for any other storytellers out there who want to get the story of a generation out there, Little Alpha, we're going to be continuing to create more content in other languages, in other topic areas. And so if you've got a piece of the puzzle that you want to share, let us know. We'd love to help you share your story with the world. And yeah, thanks again, William from Helios. Bless you, man. Have a good rest of your eve in Japan, and we'll hear from you soon, man. Peace be with you.
Will do. Thanks.